welcome to my third vlog. Today I'm talking about what I've been doing for the last 2 years, which was getting my MBA degree from Harvard Business School. This vlog will answer the question, should I do an MBA in the first place? If by then you're convinced, keep watching because I'll answer questions about the application process and interviewing. And in the next vlog, I'll share what it was really like being at Harvard Business School. So should I do an MBA or not? The million-dollar question. Or actually, the $200,000 that you'll spend on your MBA question. There's probably a million reasons why to do an MBA, but I think they can be classified in three main things. There's an academic experience, a career experience, and a social experience. An MBA is a great academic experience. You'll learn more about doing business, about all the different industries and businesses that exist, about leadership, and about so much more. However, there's many other ways to learn this as well. A job in consulting or a job in a management position will probably learn you all those things as well, and maybe even better. There's definitely huge career benefits to an MBA. Usually your pay increases a lot when you have an MBA degree from a great institution. It's also really helpful if you want to switch careers. Some careers are really hard to break into, and they're much easier to break in from a great MBA school. For me, the most important reason to do an MBA was the third reason, the social aspect. Doing an MBA at HBS allowed me to meet people different from myself from all over the world that share two very important characteristics with me. They were very ambitious and they were very interested in business. So I think you can make a long list of all the pros and cons. What is it that you really want to get out of it? And is an MBA the only or the best place you can get it from? Yes, I could have gotten a great social experience by taking some time off and traveling. But then I wouldn't have been able to meet only people that were very interested in business and as ambitious as me. So the last thing I wanted to stress is there's not just one MBA program. What is a priority for you can also guide which MBA program you want to do. You can do a full-time or a part-time program, in-person or online program, a 1 or a 2-year program. One of the questions I get asked a lot is, I have a below-average GPA or a below-average GMAT, can I still get into HBS? So HBS admissions is really focused on getting a very diverse class composition. Every person could be put into a particular bucket. I, for example, was a female white consultant from Europe. It's all about standing out within your bucket. As a consultant, there's a lot of you, even as a female consultant not from the US. So yes, your application basically needs to be perfect. However, if you are competing in a bucket where they get a lot fewer applicants from, which is mostly people not coming from banking, consulting, or private equity, but coming from industry jobs, startups, you have a much bigger chance of getting. Another question I get is, how is an MBA different from a PhD or a master's degree? And if you already have one of those, should you still do an MBA? An MBA is so different from any other academic experience because it is so pragmatic. I haven't read a single scientific article in the 2 years that I was there. Rather, every day we read a case. It was a story, and it talks about real businesses, real people, and real problems. Our class discussions were usually about 80% students talking and discussing their views on the case. And then maybe maximum 20 minutes the professor sharing their views and some frameworks that we could use going forward. In the second year, there was also a lot of room to work on your own business ideas. So you could work on your own startup or help out other businesses that you were interested in. How do you know when you're ready for an MBA? I did my MBA after only 2 years of work experience, and I had classmates who had more than 10 years of working experience. I actually think both of those could work. The HBS MBA has a strong focus on leadership. The shorter you've worked, the less leadership experience you are likely to have. So I really recommend not starting an MBA before you've had some leadership experience. And this can be as simple as managing an associate on the team. However, I definitely saw a benefit of doing my MBA early because you have a longer career to benefit from it. One thing almost all MBA programs ask for is a GRE or GMAT score. These are basically standardized tests that you can take all over the world. I myself took the GMAT a couple of years ago and I scored a 760. So how did I prepare for this? The GMAT basically has two main components, a verbal component and a quantitative component. I started by doing a couple of free tests online. I scored really high on the verbal part pretty early on, so I knew I had to focus my efforts on the quantitative part. But this all depends on how good you are with math and also what you chose to do in school. I prepped really heavily for the GMAT, particularly on the math part. I took 5 weeks off from college and I spent 5 days a week, 5 hours every day practicing math problems. So the big question is, where do you find the time to practice that much? If you're watching this, you're still in college and you're already thinking about doing an MBA, I really recommend taking the test now. The test is valid for about 5 years, which is probably the time period within you'll be applying. If you're working, I think the key is to start early. You won't have 5 hours every day to practice. You might only have 5 hours a week. Finally, realize that you'll get a lot of competition from people who take the test multiple times and who spend a lot of money on preparing. I was still in college, so I didn't have any budget to spend on preparing for the test. I found a lot of great resources online, some of which I'll link in the description of this video. What is the interview process like? The HBS interview were the most intense 30 minutes of my life, and that includes recruiting for top-tier consulting jobs. I strongly recommend taking the interview in person because it's a great signal that you really want this. Even better is if you can take the interviews on campus. The admissions team keeps track of everyone who's visited. If you can't during the interview process, schedule a campus visit some other time. During the 30-minute interview, we went through every single item on my resume and why I did those things. We also talked extensively about my application essay, about leadership, and about my expectations from HBS. My main recommendation is that as soon as you're accepted for the interview, you purchase the Harbus interview guide, which I'll link below. Every single question that was asked to me during the interview was listed in this guide. So last question on getting into HBS. A lot of people ask me, how did you get in? I applied from a pretty standard background in consulting. So I made sure I ticked all the table stake boxes. I worked for a great consulting firm, had a really good GPA in college, a 760 on my GMAT, and really strong recommendation letters from partners in my firm. Then there is the essay, and this is the place where you can really show yourself to the admissions office. So I really recommend opening up completely. Second, I think it's really powerful if you can link who you are to what impact you'll have on the HBS community. In my essay, I wrote about what it was like for me working in an environment with only men around me and not having female role models in my family or in my company. And I also wrote what I was planning to do about that. But to be honest, if I had to do this all again, I would probably write an essay about what my sister with Down syndrome has meant to me. One of my favorite essays that I've read was from a friend of mine. She was also in consulting, and she wrote a one-page essay about how inspiring others to be more healthy was so core to who she was and how she was instilling that in everything she did in life. It sounds pretty simple, but it's something that made her unique and made her human, and she showed a great way on how that would impact the HBS community.